Welcome to another special Hornbill TV explainer, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Al. Ireland is currently on boil after several days of rioting, arson and widespread violence the country has never seen in decades. Rioters in Dublin torched city buses and police vehicles and damaged storefronts in the city, ladies and gentlemen. It all started with a knife attack on Thursday. Police blame far-right agitators for starting the violence on Thursday, which began after 3 children and a number of people were stabbed on Dublin's Parnell Square. The identity of the man, said to be in his 50s, has not yet been released. According to reports, at least 4 people, including 3 children, were attacked on November 23rd, allegedly by an Algerian Muslim. The immigrant is said to be a naturalized Irish citizen. The stabbing attack occurred outside a school in Dublin. Now, following the riots, the MMA fighter Conor McGregor took to X and wrote to people to not let any Irish property be taken over, and he called the situation in Ireland a war. Now, the veteran fighter posted again telling Ireland that it was at war. He called for action and reforms besides criticizing the Irish government. The MMA fighter also lashed out at the Irish government for the murder of the 23-year-old Irish primary school teacher Aisling Murphy, an Irish citizen who was murdered by an immigrant, a Slovak national. Now, the pro-immigration policies of the government have often attracted criticism from certain sections of the Irish people, ladies and gentlemen. The stabbing incident was just a sparking point. Irish Prime Minister Leo Varadkar has been facing a lot of criticism for failing to secure Irish citizens from the harm allegedly posed by immigrants in view of recent incidents, and also for curbing free speech of the Irish people instead. The richest man in the world, Mr. Elon Musk himself, to join in on the criticism. Resharing a post by an ex-user earlier, he wrote that the language being proposed as law in Ireland means this could literally happen to you just for having a meme on your phone. That's what he said. After more than half a century of tolerant immigrant policies in Europe, there is a growing resistance to immigrants who are increasingly being blamed for destroying Europe's socio-economic landscape and cultural character in this regard. According to records, net migration among Ireland's 5.3 million population rose to its second highest levels since records started. Now, approximately 141,600 immigrants entered Ireland between April 2022 and 2023. Now, according to Irish Times, that's a news outlet, it is the highest number of immigrants to enter the state in a year since immigration peaked at 151,100 in 2007. That's what the Central Statistics Office reported earlier. The numbers between April 2022 and April 2023 increased by the arrival of approximately 81,000 people from outside the European Union. Most of them seem to be refugees fleeing the war in Ukraine. Now, the population of Ireland is now estimated to be approximately 52 lakh and 81,600 in that region. This is said to be an increase of about 97,600 people on the figures recorded in 2022. This is an increase of almost 2% in a single year, and that's the biggest since 2008, when the population increased by 1,09,200. That's what the Irish Times reported. And Dublin, the heart of the riots on Thursday, already has accommodation pressures. The Irish capital is said to be growing faster than the rest of the country, with a population surpassing about 1.5 million for the first time. The Guardian explains the situation eloquently here. A strange duality characterized Thursday's riots in Dublin. The intensity of the violence caught most people by surprise, and yet there was also a feeling of inevitability in this regard. That's what the newspaper reported. It cited Ireland's Booker Prize winning novelist Mr. Paul Lynch saying this. He said, he was astonished by the sudden intense violence, but he realized that the possibility of such an outbreak was always under the surface. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the tensions had been building for decades that it needed just a small spark to set the hay bales on fire. The decades had seen a gradual building of angst, frustration, and a simmering social discourse against immigrants and pro-immigrant policies of the Irish government. Now, viewers must take into account the context of the Israel-Hamas war, which has stirred up both anti-Israel and anti-Palestine sentiments, not to mention an anti-Islam narrative that had always characterized the democratic world's sense of defense. Rallies and support rallies, either in support or against Israel or Gaza, had been spreading across Europe since the war began. Traditionally, anti-Islam sentiments in Europe generally stem from incidences of violence perpetrated by Islamic terrorists over the past few decades. Now, these sentiments have often led to an anti-immigrant posturing based on the belief that immigrants, particularly those from Muslim countries, were responsible for changing the cultural landscape of the countries they migrated into. Now, the war that Israel launched in response to the Hamas terrorists attacking Israeli civilians on October 7th actually gave an opportunity to both the far-right sections of Europe and pro-Israel proponents here in this regard, ladies and gentlemen. It led them to perhaps conflate both the problem of Islamic terrorism and immigration from Muslim countries and mostly African countries. The riots in Ireland was one such case of conflation. Far-right activists and agitators speculated that the attack bore the marks of Islamic terrorism. It didn't help that the suspect behind the Thursday stabbing in Dublin was an Algerian Muslim person. Now, the event also referenced the killing of school teacher Ashley Murphy in 2022 by a Slovak national, which led to a national conversation, a national soul-searching about women's safety, and it was also used by far-right sections for exemplifying the apparent threat foreign men, and that is immigrants, pose to Irish women. All these factors stirred up frenzy on social media, which led to nationalist Irish agitators to go on a rampage, ladies and gentlemen. Now, again, it didn't help that the country's Prime Minister, Mr. Leo Varadkar, sparked global outrage with his apparently close reference to a 9-year-old Hamas hostage as lost and has now been found. That's what he said. Lost and has now been found. That was what he said when the child was released by hostages earlier. In a post on social media, Mr. Varadkar welcomed the release of 9-year-old Israeli Irish hostage Emily Hand. He called her a child who was lost but has now been found and returned, lost and found. Emily Hand was captured by Hamas terrorists and released in a prisoner exchange after being held hostage for approximately 50 days in Gaza, ladies and gentlemen. So the Prime Minister's apparent sidestepping from mentioning terrorism or terrorists or kidnapping or hostage taking was viewed as pandering to the actions of the Hamas terrorists or terrorism in general, especially because of the climate of anti-Semitism here. Anti-Semitism is hatred for Jews or people of Israel. Now, his post was viewed by an astounding 42 million users and attracted approximately 22,000 comments somewhere in the region. Now, Mr. Vartka had to switch off the replies for all the hate that he was getting in that regard. See, Israel's allies, much of the democratic world, including the United States, India, Canada, and the European countries, have voiced support for Israel's right to defend itself. However, for the Irish Prime Minister, he had stated that although Israel had the right to defend itself, he said, Israel doesn't have the right to do wrong. He said Israel's military campaign amounts to collective punishment. That's what he said. And in this climate of anti-Semitism, he was caught between the devil and the sea. Again, it didn't help that such a statement came from Leo Vartka himself, whose father was born in Bombay, the city now we know as Mumbai in India. In other words, Mr. Vartka is Indian origin, at least from his father's side. Therefore, in the eyes of Irish nationalists and far-right sections of Ireland, he was an immigrant. This strange context may have given the far-right activists and nationalists even more reasons to use the opportunity offered by the Dublin stabbing incident to express their anti-immigrant sentiments. And these sentiments had been building for decades, ladies and gentlemen. Now, according to the Central Statistics Office figures for 2022, 1/5 of the population in 26 counties of the Republic of Ireland was born abroad. I'm not surprised that they called it born abroad, meaning they're immigrants. The CSO says that 80% of the usually resident population was born in Ireland, which is reportedly a decrease of 3% since 2016. Now, according to the BBC, the arrival of more than 90,000 Ukrainian refugees fleeing the war with Russia accounts for some of these decrease. The issue is complex and the problem is more than one, ladies and gentlemen, but media observers believe that far-right activists are seeking to capitalize on the opportunity offered by increasing pressure on housing shortage, cost of living crisis, and fears about the growing numbers of immigrants and asylum seekers there. In fact, slogans such as Ireland is full or Ireland for the Irish people only are reportedly very frequent in Irish conversations and national conversations. All these stress factors put together, and nationalist inspirations and the pressure from immigrants changing the social, political, and cultural character of the country at the heart of it could have led to the surge of violence in Dublin. Illegal immigration across the world continues to be a challenging topic for national governments and communities, ladies and gentlemen. Even in Asia, the conversation for both the government and the community, even in our own state, Nagaland, and states such as Assam and Tripura, has become complex and difficult. Let's talk about Nagaland. In 2012, reports say there were about 4 lakh illegal immigrants in Nagaland. We don't know the exact number, but that was what the report said. Another report in 2018 quoted at least 80,000 to 1 lakh illegal immigrants in Nagaland. The lack of proper data has made the issue even worse. Now, what is common sense is this. Illegal immigrants are one of the biggest challenges in the ways of states like Assam, Nagaland, and Tripura. Their social, political, and cultural identity is at threat here. During the 12th session of the 13th Nagaland Legislative Assembly recently, a legislator had warned, and he continues to warn, how illegal immigrants are going to change the face and character of Nagaland even in the near future, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be talking more about all these issues in our later programs, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for watching Hornbill TV. I'm Al Ngali. See you next time.